Welcome to the Blogging and SEO show. I'm Michaela, a stay-at-home mom of 3 who just happens to be in love with everything related to SEO, blogging, marketing, coffee, and shedding light into the many mystifying corners of search engine optimization and what that means for us service providers, small business owners, and even bloggers. We're ditching the do-it-all narrative surrounding SEO and blogging and just sitting down and crafting strategies that are sustainable but still get us those first-page, long-lasting results. Now let's get cozy, grab your fave sweater and a cup of tea or coffee, and let's talk everything blogging and SEO. Amanda, a strategy that I've kind of used to stay off of social media there for a bit. And so it really ties into that social media optional portion. But when I went to your event this year, I keep feeling it's last year. It feels like time flies. But going to the conference, I met so many people, a lot of the podcasters who are currently in Pod to Blog program, and we're wrapping up as we're recording this. We're in the last 3 weeks. We're at the conference. So I felt like that was a true maybe I don't, they would have never met me without that, which is, I thought was so cool. And here I am working closely with so many of them. And it was, I would consider traditional in-person marketing. But before I get distracted, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I will just talk. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Amanda Bennett. I am currently a podcast guesting strategist for mom entrepreneurs. I help them grow their audience and their impact just by being guests on a line podcast. I will say I also help podcasters. We have the Podcasting Moms Club, and hence also the event that you're talking about came out of that desire and that community that we've built of mom podcasters wanting to grow their podcast, wanting to be off social media, wanting to make more money with their podcast. So that's the world I run in, and that's the people that I help. I am also a mom. I have 2 little kids. My son will be starting kindergarten in the fall, so please don't talk too much about that. I might fall apart. And I had my podcast. I started back in the podcast space in 2019. I was formerly, in my previous life, I was a nonprofit fundraiser. I have a degree in nonprofit management, and that was my whole world until my daughter was born. And so I decided to step away from the corporate world. And then when I got back into things and really wanted to do something for myself again, I knew it was not going to be going back traditional 9-to-5 job. And a lot of the things that happened when I was a new mom, really the struggles, the joys, the pains, all the things we experienced that I was not hearing a lot of moms talk about, spurred me to create my podcast, which was a motherhood podcast. And after I entered that world, all these doors started to open, and I met these amazing moms, other experts, and I saw the opportunities there. I saw the opportunities for growth, in personal growth and business growth. And so I shifted everything, and now I'm sort of, I guess, an accidental entrepreneur. I would not classify myself as someone who's been a lifelong entrepreneur. I love routines. I love predictability. So this is kind of entrepreneurship and motherhood. I think we can all agree on are 2 of the biggest personal development tools you could invest in. And that's where I've come up here and found amazing podcasters like you. So I'm so glad I'm here.
Yay. Honestly, I don't think I knew about that first beginning as having that mom podcast. That's kind of exciting to learn about. I always felt like that was a portion that got me started. I bought my mic. I was like, I'm going to have a motherhood podcast because I had this whole mom blog and do parties. I was like, and I'll interview other moms. It'll be so cool. And I ended up just talking their ear off, and it was so much fun, but I didn't realize like the work it went into producing a podcast. And it was very overwhelming. I was like, I don't even know where to start with this. So I took a step back, and I actually started being a guest on other people's podcasts. I was like, well, I've got the mic. I might as well like show up and stuff. And I think back to all my missed opportunities. Like, I probably did not talk about an offer, or I didn't even mention who I was, or like my brand name. I was like, I'm just going to sit here and talk to them. But I did get a good backlink, so I'm not upset about it. But it definitely was it was a learning experience, but it is such a growth to have conversations.
Yeah. And I will say, you know, 2019, whenever you start your
Mhm.
podcast, a lot of those things just come from doing. People can tell you their experience, and that's great. You can write it down and, make notes. But I think a lot of that comes from actually doing it. So there's no shame in that. I mean, everybody starts somewhere, and you're not overnight going to be this amazing interviewer or amazing guest on a podcast. I I didn't even have that revelation of, oh, guesting is a tool, like a strategy, a
Mhm.
marketing strategy, until I had one of my past guests from that first podcast come to me and she said, "Thank you so much for having me on your show. I got 2 clients after they heard me on your show." And I was like, "Hold on. People, like, booked you after they
Yeah.
heard your conversation?" She was like, "Yeah." So that was the light bulb moment for me, that it was because for me, I wanted to create a good show, value for my listeners. I wasn't necessarily thinking about how can I bring in the right guests, because it was a very
Yeah.
conversational podcast like yours. And then that light bulb went off and I was like, "Oh, man, if people do this not the right way, but if
Yeah.
people do this strategically, this has a really is an amazing opportunity for someone like you and me who doesn't wanna be on social media all the time, who doesn't have, some other big platform that you can produce content on all the time. This is a great way to get out there." So,
I was thinking about this before we hopped on. Everything is such a learning experience and learning how to do stuff right, and it's a test and see what works, and
yep,
test and see how you feel, and like, is this something you can actually do, or is it something that doesn't work for you? Because I mean, honestly, there's so many strategies. There's so many strategies in the world to like market and grow. And I truly believe there is not one thing besides like everybody just making sure they have a website to send people back to. I think that's
right.
super important, but like
Yeah,
the actual marketing aspect, there's so many different ways to do it that there's not you have to do it like XYZ to get a result. But when I was thinking about the social media option, I was like, I really need to do more with my guest episodes, not just like who I'm bringing on, but, like, putting it into the content and repurposing that content onto other places. I was thinking about, like, carousels I can make from, the little clips that we have from this conversation that'll just save me time for anything else that I can integrate it into my marketing from, like,
yeah.
one podcast episode.
Right, right. Absolutely. I mean, there's so many ways you can use it. And to your point, 100%. There I follow Jeremy Inns, who's he's in podcasting, he's a podcast marketer.
Mhm.
And he said, because he did this survey seeing what kind of marketing strategies people use to grow their podcast, promote their podcast. And it was everything. Social media, it was guesting, it was
Mhm.
paid ads, it was everything. And the funniest piece of data was that everything worked for somebody and didn't work for someone else. And I think that is exactly to your point, is you have to figure out what works for you. And it's not a reflection on, oh, I'm doing this wrong or something's wrong with me. If it's not working, just try something else. So I just want to reiterate that because of your point, and I think people get lost in I see people doing this thing and it should work for me, and that's not necessarily the case.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there is that overarching you have to check off this checklist and it has to be done this way and you have to show up in this way, otherwise it's not going to work, and if it's not working then you need to change you don't need to change the platform that you're on, which is like completely opposite of what it should be. But I feel like that leads us into my like leading question of how are you social media optional kind of like in your business? And I know it obviously does some podcast guesting, but
Yeah. And I think it takes a certain amount of self-awareness to know what you like doing, what you're good at doing, and
Mhm.
really leaning into that. For me, I have a background in events.
Mhm.
When I was a fundraiser, we did galas, we did live events, I did stewardship events for donors, and I really love that. I'm an introvert, but I love being around people, and then once I'm done, I'm like,
Yeah,
"Okay,
you gotta, like,
peace out. I gotta go sit on the
Bennett.
couch and binge watch some TV real quick." But I really enjoyed that, and I have experience doing that, and so I lean into that. That's why we have I have a community. It's an online community, but it is a face-to-face. We're in there having conversations. I love talking with people, obviously, podcast guesting, and then the live events. So I really leaned into that. I also, my events, but other people's events too. So I find communities where I like to plug into and network. It's like the
Yeah.
professional word, but like get to know people, get to just be curious about what other people do and how my business might be able to help them. So whether that is in person or online, I try to find some ways. And some of that is just referrals, like people
Mhm.
knowing you and saying, hey, you should know this person, and I'll connect you. That's a lot of what has happened. There was the funniest thing. It's just a cascade of events. If you are in community and in conversations with people, it's my favorite thing. After our in-person event, I had some people who were volunteers. And the volunteers that I had were because I knew another mom who had a conference. And I said, hey, Sydney, we need some volunteers. Who do you suggest? She recommended some volunteers. Volunteers showed up. Fantastic. Those volunteers knew about the event and what we did. Obviously, they were there. They're like, it's awesome. They told someone else who was a podcaster about the event, and she reached out to me. So it's like this long chain of I joke because I love Kevin Bacon, but it's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon where everyone in this world, you are 6 degrees or less. I mean, especially with the internet, right?
Mhm.
You are less than 6 people away from anyone in the world. And so it really is about just having those conversations and showing up that way. And then podcasting is kind of an extension of that. You can do that strategically. You can invite people on that you really want to have conversations with. It's more curated. But I think that because then with podcasting, you can, like you were talking about, create more content out of that.
Mhm.
So that's your opportunity. You don't have to be on a million places. You can use your SEO. You can use that content if you want to be on social. But I get drained by social
Yeah.
media. And I think, as long as you have a visibility platform, as long as you have a way to draw people in, go to where your people are, that's the goal. And whatever that looks like, I think you have to figure that out. But for me, it's been podcasting, networking with events, with masterminds, with communities, things like that. And just hosting my own community. So I think that's where I like to lean into. And I do post on social a little bit. And I
Yeah.
know that it is valuable as long as you use it strategically. And I think you have to gauge where that healthy boundary
Yeah.
is. So yeah, but there's a lot of ways. And those are just the ways that I like to build business development, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I've always I so just to kinda come back to that membership that you have, like, the community and you show up in communities, I have such a hard time doing that. Like, I've tried running a community, I've tried doing all the community things, and so Facebook is actually one of those platforms, and I feel like that's more of like you have your Facebook groups and stuff like that. And so I've actually come completely off of that. I have my personal account and I'm on there on occasion, but otherwise I'm not in groups. I'm not doing anything. I think the closest I get to a community now is maybe Threads
Yeah.
with that conversation. So it's always interesting to see how people really do have like a thriving, not even just like having a community, but also like being active in communities and sharing and speaking. And that's just my 2 cents on it. But I've always struggled with that. But that's been one of those I fought so long to try and make it work. And then I was like, you know what? It's not for me. And so once I let go of the energy that was like being spent there, I was able to put it elsewhere
Yeah.
and have like
Yeah.
something pick up that slack. So it was
Yeah, for sure. And I will say about hosting communities, leading
mhm,
communities, I think again that was an area I had to let go of, it's supposed to look this way kind of thing. So when I say community, I have an email list. Everyone's on email, and we do a once a month Zoom call to talk about a topic around podcasting. I do have a Slack group. I'm, for all those people, they
Yeah.
can communicate with each other inside of Slack. It's not on Facebook. I very much was like, I'm not going to be on Facebook, so we're not doing this on Facebook. And that's the way it is. Like, it's my community. I can do what I want. And people were kind of behind me on that. They're like, we don't really get on Facebook
Mhm.
either. So I am not as active on Slack as I probably should be, but there is that option for people to communicate with each other on there. I always encourage people on the calls to like share their info and connect. We have a directory. Everything that when I started it, my intention was I need to get their information and make sure that I can be I'm the facilitator.
Yeah.
Okay. That was another shift I had to like own, because I'm like you. I'm like, I don't want to run a community. I don't want to like be the person. But again, I heard Jeremy talk about something years ago, and it was not related to podcasting, but it very much hit home with me right before I started that community. He was talking about a group of his friends wanted to get together and go to dinner, but it wasn't happening because no one was taking the lead. No one was being like, okay, when are we going to do this? Where are we going to meet up? Essentially just facilitating the dinner. And I was like, you know what? And he said, once he did that, he's like, I'm going to be that person. Once he did that, everybody showed up and they loved it, and they would do it like once a month or something.
Mhm.
And then when he left or when he couldn't do it, they just didn't show up. And that is what you do when you're a community leader. And so I just reframed it for me as like, I don't have to know all the information. I don't have to be the expert necessarily. I just have to facilitate and coordinate and provide a space for people to
Mhm.
show up. And that's very much what I've done. Kind of, again, on my own terms. I'm like, listen, it's free. It's once a month. You show up or you don't. I send out the replay. It's all on email. Take it or leave it. And I just am been so impressed by the people who have shown up in that group and engaged and shared so openly. So it is, I mean, I think there is kind of a skill you develop. It's not
Mhm.
something right out of the gate that you are born with or you're not. I think some people might be inclined to learn that skill. They're like, "Oh, I want to learn this skill." But being the host or being the facilitator is you're not gonna be great at it right out of the gate either. So, that's the other thing is we've been doing this for 3 years now. So, that is but that's where that fits me so much, and you got your things. So, I that's such a beautiful illustration there of when you do lean into what your natural skills, interests are, it provides a space for growth.
Oh, yeah. Coming back to the podcast guesting, 'cause I love to get distracted. But when I recommend people, like, do their social media optional, and you've almost, like, presented these 3 parts of your business. I always say that we start with, like, 3 things, and it's your website. I always say, like, pick a social media or, like, some type of community building so that you're actually talking to people, and then some type of long form, whether that's, like, podcasting, blogs, emails, some type of long form information, like, you're giving a good bit. And one of my favorite suggestions for that long form is podcasting, and obviously a little blogging there too on Pod to
Yes.
Blogs. But I feel like podcast guesting works just as well as doing your own podcast. Like when I say podcasting, I'm not saying that you have to go out and start a show and be like,
Right.
this is done. But I feel like if you do it consistently and with a strategy behind it, like podcast guesting can kind of take that third leg of your marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, I think like you said, you have to be strategic about it. You have to know where you're going to send people. So
Mhm.
why are you doing guesting in the first place? Is it to get people into your community? Is it to sell your book? Is it to get people into a webinar for your launch of your course? Why are you doing that and working backwards to make sure that that's a seamless experience for them is like what you talk about in the episode is naturally going to answer those maybe questions, talk to the beliefs they have, and then set them up to be like, well, if this resonated with you, if you really want to learn more about this, or if you need help with this problem, here's the next step you can take. And I think a lot of people, there's several things there, but I think a lot of people maybe think they have something to send them to, but are not as strategic as they could be about it. And it's a work in progress too.
Mhm.
I don't want to, there is absolutely no shame in if you've done a bunch of interviews and nothing's come of it, or you feel like you're just kind of floundering out there, you're having conversations. There's no shame in that. It takes time to figure out some of these things. You can work with someone like me who has helped other people do it if you need some additional help. But it's just when you understand why you're doing it and then what your signature topics are. So, what your expertise is that's going to
Mhm.
set, like what your area is that you're going to really shine talking about podcast guesting or SEO, specifically podcast to blog. Like that is an incredible signature topic to talk about with
Mhm.
somebody. And I think once you do that, you will start to see it. It goes back to messaging too. It's like if you're clear with your messaging on what you do and how you do that, it is easier for people to answer the question because what they're looking for. In my copy mentor Marisa always talks about people buy from you if you can answer the two questions: do you solve the problem that they have, and are you the person that they want to help solve that problem? And so that speaks to your experience, your testimonials, your transformations, your experience, but then also your personality. Like, are you that person that they want to spend time helping with? So, and that is just podcasting is such a great vehicle for those to answer those questions.
Oh my gosh, it is. I'm saying it again, but we're in the middle. We're at like the end point of Pod to Blog right now. So we're taking, all these podcast episodes that they put. I feel like podcasting gets so much of the personality. I really, really love like the amount of personality, the way that you can like just have, sometimes jokes don't land as well in blog posts. And you're like, oh,
Oh,
that doesn't work because you don't have that intonation or like the way that it's being conveyed. It just is not the same thing. So we've had to go through this process of trying to trim down what is appropriate for a podcast audience versus appropriate for like readers and how they're different. But it really does come down to the same things that your copy mentor was talking about is like, are you the person to solve their problem? And is this how they're going to solve their problem? We always talk about like blogging in this like tiered system that at the bottom, like, there are these people who, they probably already know what their problem is. They're very problem aware, but
mm,
they don't know who is gonna be the person to solve it. They don't know, is it you? Is it your neighbor? Is it your competitor? Like, they're wondering where they're gonna, like, spend their money essentially or
yeah,
give their email. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a monetary exchange. It could be
right.
time, energy, because I mean, all of these things are valuable to us.
Yes.
And that exchange is there. Okay, so I have a few questions. Are you willing to answer them?
Yes.
Okay, so what is like the best thing for you to send people to at the end of like a guest interview? Like if you're a guest on somebody's podcast, what is the best thing? Like paid, free, calls?
Yeah. Yeah. And back to our previous conversation, I have seen several of these things work for
Mhm.
people. So this is not a like, you should do this and only this. But I do find that when you have a podcast listener, thinking about what's going to be the least amount of friction, getting them because they're currently listening to this episode, probably driving a car, washing
Oh,
dishes,
yeah.
doing laundry. What is the least amount of friction it's going to take to get them to do an action? So I will say I have purchased books after listening to Donald Miller's podcast with an author. I have done that, yes. But it takes a certain amount of effort because I have to like make a note of the book
Mhm.
while I'm not doing it. So I like to have people do something that is easy, like freebies have worked. Yes, if it is the obvious next step for that person after the conversation, a freebie or a discovery call can work. I do think that you're going to think about it in steps.
Mhm.
So they've spent 30 minutes, an hour with you, which is probably more than they would. Well, Definitely more than they would get if they scroll your social media.
Yeah.
Probably more than they would get reading your blog. However, if that's the first time they've experienced you at all, the chances that they're just going to hop into a high ticket item or be ready to just jump 2 feet in with experiencing you in another capacity is probably slim. So I would give them another little step. So maybe that is a freebie. Maybe that is a private podcast. We've experimented a lot with they're currently listening to a podcast. They're probably podcast listeners. So offering them a private podcast as a lead magnet is probably the least amount of friction that you could give. It's like podcast to podcast. But something like that where they can experience a win that you have talked about in the episode, but without investing their whole self. Like baby step next. And a lot of times that is some sort of freebie in whatever that looks like. If that's an e-course, I have my copy mentor Marisa did a podcast tour to get people into her webinar that was a launch for her course. And she got a good percentage of people from those guesting opportunities into the webinar. So that was another way they could like just kind of dip their toe in. They heard her on the podcast. They're like, this sounds interesting. I'm not ready to invest in the course, but I can go to a webinar and hear a little bit more and see if that's for me. So thinking about it in terms of steps on the ladder to get to work with you.
Okay, and then do we pick one thing or can we give them options?
I would give them one thing. I was talking with one of and this is similar things apply to your podcast and to podcast guesting because you're doing an episode. You may not be the host, but you are essentially using that episode as your content. And that's not like using you, but like that episode is your platform.
Yeah.
You're vouching for me and I love you for that. So I was talking to one of the ladies inside my community and I love her podcast. It's so good. It's like chock full of value, but she has like 5 calls to action in it. She promotes her freebie. She promotes her course. She even asking people to rate and review and share it with a friend is a call to action. So there's multiple things happening there. And I'm like, I think it's like when you go, I say this about podcast guesting and sharing your topics with the host, give them 2 at the most. Like I say pitch 1, give them 2 at the most.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like when you go to the Cheesecake Factory. I don't know if you've been to the Cheesecake Factory.
I haven't, but I've heard.
I'm going to tell you, you open the menu, it is like a novel. There's pages and pages and pages of options for what you could eat. I mean, they have everything from like salmon to Chinese salad. It's crazy. And what happens to your brain when you have so many options is you pick nothing. You have such a hard time deciding that you may not pick anything. Or just cheesecake. It's the Cheesecake Factory. I'm going to get some cheesecake, right?
You stick with the safe option.
Yeah. So I think when you give people, it's okay to give them, here's the obvious next step for you. And if you're not ready for that, you can find me here. That's okay. But I think giving them too many options, too many calls to actions, too many next steps is just going to paralyze them and they're not going to do anything.
Oh, I totally see that. I mean, I teach. I'd say I don't teach similar for blogging, but because you do have like softer sells, but with show notes, because show notes are essentially where you're asking for the click or you're asking them to, either search it on their own or something like you have a limited space. And if all that's down there is links, I'm sure that could very quickly get confusing, especially if they're skimming and they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? What is that next step? So I could see that being very quickly like brain numbing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about how many decisions we have to make in a day. If you just make it super easy for them, least amount of decision making possible, they will thank you. They will click it. They will open it, they will download it. They'll be like, yes, I don't have to think a lot about this. This is my next thing.
Mhm.
Yes, that I know that's how I feel personally too. Too many decisions in a day.
Yeah, no, I make decisions for myself, and I make decisions for 3 little people every day. I could go with one less decision, that would be
Right?
nice.
Yeah.
It would keep my life a little bit simpler. Alright, okay, so question, what if at the end of this, what was your goal for, like, being on as a guest on mine? What was your goal?
Yeah. I mean, one is
Kind
the
of
connection.
invited you, so
Yes, you invited me, but I will say, I think we can't forget that these are conversations with
Mhm,
other business owners. Like, I love being connected to you. I want to continue to be connected to you. And so I'm here to show up and help your audience as well. And that was one is like, have a conversation with you, reconnect with you, be able to give your audience some things to take away. But then the next step for person listening, if you're listening to this, is I would love for you, if you are interested in using podcast guesting as one of the ways to build your business off social, to go to gotchamama.com/guest. And there is a place where I can chat with you, and it's like zero commitment. I will answer your questions. We'll figure out if guesting is right for you. And then whatever that next step from there might be. So that is my CTA for you.
thank you. I was actually, I feel like that left me with another answer from a previous question I had in my brain was like, do we say are we putting out our websites and saying forward slash? Are we putting them saying, "Yeah, they're gonna be in the show notes." I'm sure the host will put them there.
Yeah, I mean, I like to do both. I just happen to use my website as that landing place because
Mhm,
I have a show it site. I love it. It's easy, but having somewhere where you can track the actions that people do take. So it's hard. I mean, podcasting naturally, we've talked about
mhm.
this a lot. We talk about this in my community a lot. The analytics and like data for podcasting is really fuzzy and hard to kind of
Yeah.
rein in. But anytime you can get some kind of hard data, so if you're listening to this, you go over and you click on that website, I can tell that you landed there.
Yeah.
Then I can also see how many people landed versus how many people actually clicked to schedule a call with me. And based on that data, I can then, going forward, I can then tweak things if I need to. I can choose another
Mhm,
lead magnet or value add for them. And I think being able to just get data where you can and use that data to inform, not to like shame yourself or feel bad that you didn't get as many click throughs as you wanted, but to use that to make decisions
mhm.
that is going to just help you with the whole strategy.
I'll go ahead and expand on that. Are y'all using UTMs or do you just use, like, a specific landing page?
So I will be super honest. I don't feel like I know enough about UTMs. I do know that I'm just using a landing page currently.
Yeah.
I know UTMs, and I tell people, yes, there's several people that are like very knowledgeable about UTMs, and I say go learn from them. That's like my thing because I'm like, I'm not that person. But tracking, yes,
Yeah.
with unique links and being able to access your data, whether that's Google Analytics or wherever you're checking your data. I mean, that is, I wish I was more of a data person. That's why I lean on people like you. Michaela, I send my people, I'm like, I know you need this. I'm not your person. You talk to Michaela Spencer.
This is what you need. No, so, the thing that I've been working on lately is making sure that UTMs are in place in the key events, but I feel like there is, like, a little bit of a cheat around it if you're not doing the same level of things, is that you could do, like, pretty links
Yeah.
and have,
Yeah.
like, a pretty link redirect because you can see
Yes.
how many hits a link gets,
Yes.
but truly, like, having those key events set up for your main stuff and using UTMs is a huge help if you're really into the data and seeing, like, what's working and what's not. That's gonna be a big thing for you. Or if you're doing a lot of things on, like, different platforms.
Right.
So, like, if you choose podcasting and then you choose YouTube, and then your next one is Instagram, like, making sure that you have different UTMs for each one because or even each episode so that you know exactly, like, where people came from because as they continue to exist, I I wouldn't say that podcasting, like lots of old episodes get listened to unless the host, the person who has the podcast is actively trying to keep those listens happen, those
Mhm.
downloads. But with if they're on other platforms, you do have more of that visibility opportunity long term, I would say. Like if it gets put on YouTube or if the host puts it into a blog post, which I'm seeing happen more often, which I'm so happy about. Like we've been doing a few different guest post, which by the way,
Yeah.
if you have the consent of the host and you're turning it in, like you're offering to say that, you can turn it into a blog post
Blog.
on your own website, most hosts are pretty okay with it as long as, you're not copy pasting because you don't want duplicate content out there. But the way that you turn it into a blog post is going to look different than if they turned it into a blog post because of, you're two different human beings. But
Right, right, and I do think I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but you can use that piece of content that you've, go back to the transcripts and use that as a post answering the questions that you answered
yeah,
in the interview as a post people can just search and find. So it's more of a blog post on that topic
yeah.
than it would be an interview post.
Yes. Yeah, so it does end up being, like, more of a and then you get normally you cite and say, like, "By the way, this content came originally from an
Yes.
interview with
Yeah.
XYZ. If you wanna listen to the full episode, go over here."
With the backlinks.
Yep,
Yeah.
with a backlink. So it really is like this come full circle almost for marketing when it comes to podcast guesting. I choose so a lot of the times that I go on a podcast, and this is just my own personal thing, is like whenever I go on a podcast, I do show preference for shows that do repurpose their content on like I've seen repurpose their content onto other ones or that I know are gonna like send it out to their email list because I mean we're not paying. I mean, there's not really an exchange of money, although I do know you can pay to be a guest on someone's show.
That's
I
a whole different conversation,
yeah, like
Kayla.
that's I don't know if I'm quite to that point to where I wanna pay to be on someone's show yet, but I do like when I know that the host is willing to go and take it and put it out there, and I know that, as a guest, they're gonna probably share too and say that I was in that, like, that relationship right there makes it even easier or more willing to, like, say, "Yeah, Imma go on this show, Imma give them. It does end up being around an hour because we
Mhm.
have, our mini conversations beforehand, and I
Oh, yeah.
love to have that little bit because it makes it, conversation a little bit more natural. Mm. And then, the follow-up and saying like, "Hey, by the way, your episode's live." So, I mean, there is work on both ends, and I think the exchange is fairly even when both people share and give the 2 cents and what happens next. So I think
Yeah.
that like you said, you kind of are both of you we're both using this as a marketing tool, and it
Yeah.
works out and it's beneficial for both of us. It's not like one of us is getting a heads up over
It
the other.
Yes, ideally, that should be your scenario, I mean, yes, that's the mindset that the people that I work with,
Mhm,
that's the mindset I want you to have. So I have said no to several opportunities because that mindset was not there.
mhm.
And that's not for me. So,
Yeah, that's I will say like that does come with an exchange of, okay, I've had some now I think that comes into people pitching for me for, like, to be on my show, is I've had some pitches that I've had to decline a few times, not for the show, but for the past show. Either it was, like, a messaging conflict or, like, they very obviously didn't really do anything with they're very much like, "I'm gonna show up on your show, and you're gonna do everything for me."
right.
Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, yes, I'm having you on here for my time, but, like, it is a like, a symbiotic relationship, like, we're both doing stuff for each other, and I think it's a collaboration. Like, when you do a
Yes.
newsletter swap or anything like that, like, it's an equal collaboration, and I think we're gonna see more just in general, not just podcast guesting. I think collaborations are gonna be a bigger thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've already seen that happen with lots of experts who have come out with offers that are
Mhm,
focused on collaborations, whatever that looks like, bundles, email swaps, podcast guesting, like the gamut, summits. But yeah, I mean, I think that is because they are a really great way outside of social media
mhm.
to grow your business, to make those connections, to get in front of the people that you serve. So, yeah, I think you finding which type of collaboration fits you best, because there are lots of options. But I think you're leaving something on the table if you don't find one of those ways to collaborate with people.
I think it really will be one of those things that we have to integrate, or will be really beneficial if you can integrate. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, doesn't have to be podcast guesting, but I think podcast guesting is a great way to kinda do it. And I think even, like, just Instagram swaps, I think, sharing, doing the same post and having it tag each other where it's on both of our feeds, that's a collaboration right there.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different things, which takes me back to your conference. I feel like y'all used a lot of that since when y'all hosted the conference, because I remember being tagged in a few, and I think that's a great use of it.
Yeah. I don't love being on social media. It's just not something I enjoy doing, but
Mhm.
I know the value in being visible, and I want to feature other people and highlight other people on there. So using that as a way to promote our conference was kind of like, yeah, we got to do this. And being able to highlight through tagging them as
Mhm.
collaborators. And the other thing we did that I wanted, this is kind of an adjacent thing to what we talked about here today, but we found someone who loves social media and is great at social media. And we said, would you want to partner with us on, because conference day,
Mhm.
all that social content
Yeah.
was from Emily, who has a social media
Yeah, I
agency,
remember, yep.
and she's fantastic. And so we were like, yes, that's part of the that is one of the benefits of collaborating with people, is that you find people who love doing the thing that you don't necessarily love
Yeah,
to
not
do.
really a fan of this one, but
Right. And probably vice versa. There's a huge opportunity for you to be able to help them with your expertise that they most likely don't love or don't have the expertise to do. So I think that's the other piece of the puzzle, is you don't have to do everything.
yes.
And you shouldn't do
No,
everything.
you should like, please never do all the things. That is the one thing that will burn your brain out faster than anything else, is saying like, "Oh, I think it comes from almost not desperation, but almost fear
Mhm.
that we're not gonna be able to, like, succeed if we don't do this, 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 and this. Like, if I want people to see me and book me and buy from me, like, I've got to be visible, and for me to be visible, I've gotta be here, I've gotta be here, I've gotta be here, I've gotta be here, and so between that and the client work you already have, like,
Yeah.
you're just kind of in a pickle. Like, you're just kind of,
Yeah.
chilling there with a little bit of brain rot saying, "Oh, I don't really wanna do this anymore," and the thing that you love is more miserable than anything else, and
Well, and then you can't show up to actually do
yeah.
the work for your clients in the best way that you could. So, I think we've gotta just give ourselves permission to let go of some of those things like we've been talking about, and just be okay with, "I'm great at this. I know the answer to this. I know how to figure this out. I've just got to try this thing. If this is not working, again, it's not a reflection on me. I'm gonna shift over here. I'm gonna try podcast guesting, and I'm gonna do all the things that I know strategically I should be doing, and if they don't work, I'm gonna try something else."
Yeah, see, no, it never hurts to try anything. It never, like, if you're gonna try it, and like, obviously, there's exceptions to the rule, like, don't just go try everything, but
Yeah.
trying doesn't hurt. Trying doesn't hurt. Testing it out and testing the waters, because it could be something like, maybe you don't like guesting, but you really do like showing up on a podcast, and you're like, "Well, maybe a podcast is my future." And
Right.
or if you don't like the editing in them, then you're like, "Okay, maybe a podcast is in my future, but I know that I'm gonna need a team member to help me with it." So then
Yep.
you can put that in your long-term goals, and I think the more that we think about our business long term and, like, in its longevity, instead of thinking about it like, "Well, I need this to happen next month," or it's easier for us to act like it's gonna last for a long time and kinda get out of that mindset of, "Oh, do I have 6 months on my business or do I have 3 months?" And
Right.
really start thinking long term to see
Such a
the
great
result.
point. Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
All right. I think I've talked your ear off enough for today. So we'll say our closing adieus. If you want to talk one more time about your membership, or well, your free community.
Yeah, the free community is we meet once a month on Zoom, and we always have a theme. Like I said, everything will be sent out via email, and I make sure I send out reminders so you don't have to worry about that because we're all busy moms. But it is the Podcasting Moms Club, and that is if you want to learn more about that. I'm going to break my rule here and give you another CTA. But if that is something you're interested in, if you are a podcasting mom who is looking for a community of amazing, generous, kind, smart podcasting moms, go to gotchamama.com/club and you can read about that and sign up. And that's easy peasy, like free, no commitment, but it is definitely worth your time. So that's my community. Yes.
Oh, that's a great place if you want to like dip your toes in the water and test it out and see what you want to do. And if you're listening, that is the goal of this podcast. It is finding your way to be social media optional. Not my way, not Amanda's way, but we're providing you those options so that you can. And I'm not gonna lie, I do also like podcast guesting because it does build backlinks, which helps your SEO. So it's
Hand
not
in
that
hand here.
yeah.
Yes.
So even if you only do like 4 guest episodes and you're like, well, I'm not really into it, you still have those 4 guest episodes working for you. They
Yeah.
still exist. It's not that they just cease to exist. They are still there for you.
And they are always working for you. And I will say over and over again, quality over quantity when it comes to podcast guesting. Like being on the right shows where your people are actually listening and you're solving a very specific problem for them is a million times more productive than being on some podcast where they may have a few of your ideal listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. I think that's what I learned in the hard way was getting on the wrong podcast and spending time there. Not even just like the podcast I was talking, but the podcast itself was probably not the best fit. But here we are. I've got my own podcast and I've learned and it did introduce me to a lot of really cool people. So I'm down for that. But that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda. I really, truly appreciate it. But until next week and next episode, bye, y'all. As always, I hope you were able to learn at least one new thing today and how you can apply it to your own business or blog. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Blogging and SEO Show. Don't forget to hit follow so you don't miss the next episode. I promise it's a goodie. And check the show notes for everything we talked about today. And come connect with me on Instagram at comamama.co. If you have any questions or thoughts you want to share, DM me. Let's chat. Until next time, talk soon.